What if the ending of your favorite show was quietly shaped by how badly the fandom treated the person who wrote it? Nobody rewrote the ending out of anger. Nobody flipped a table and changed the script. But stories carry the fingerprints of the circumstances they were made in. And when those circumstances include 2 years of relentless pressure from the people you're making the story for, that leaves a mark, whether the loudest voices in this fandom realize it or not. That's the question sitting at the center of everything happening right now in the amazing digital circus fandom. And I think it's worth slowing down and actually thinking through it, because the final 2 episodes are coming, and this moment is more connected to what we're about to see than most people are treating it. So if you're just catching up, here's what actually happened. Gooseworx had been running a Reddit account where she'd genuinely engage with fans, responding to theories, dropping small hints, sharing her take on characters. It was one of the more unusual things about this fandom, a creator actually showing up in the conversation. Then a live stream clip spread where she confirmed that Pomni and Jax are the 2 central characters of the show. She also replied to a thread reassuring fans that Regatha would still get real development in the final episodes, and rather than that being received as a creator trying to communicate, it became the trigger for a wave of harassment serious enough that she deleted the account entirely. On Blue Sky, she posted about feeling constantly stressed and wanting to rediscover her creative passion. Posts she later deleted as well. The subreddit moderators put out a formal statement condemning what happened and noted that the bulk of the hostility wasn't coming from Reddit at all. It was coming from Twitter. Now here's what makes this situation hit differently than typical fandom drama. The amazing digital circus was never supposed to be this big. Gooseworx originally pitched a 2D series to Glitch Productions, but the resources weren't there for it at the time. The digital circus came together as an alternative, a concept she developed in about 2 weeks. Not a calculated franchise play, just a creative solution to a practical problem. And there's actually a quiet parallel to the show's own DNA here. The amazing digital circus draws direct inspiration from Harlan Ellison's I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, a story Ellison wrote in a single day that became his most recognized work. He spent years with complicated feelings about it because he had other stories he cared about far more deeply, and none of them got that kind of attention. Gooseworx has been living her own version of that, something she made quickly and without grand expectations turned into a cultural moment with a massive audience and all the weight that comes with it. And during the long gap between episodes 4 and 5, she was reportedly rewriting later episodes and dialogue in response to the pressure she was feeling from the fandom. The Reddit situation wasn't a sudden storm. It was the most visible point in something that's been building for a long time. Here's a dynamic worth naming clearly because it keeps repeating itself. Once fans knew Gooseworx was reachable on Reddit, the nature of the space shifted. People weren't just speculating for fun anymore, they were looking to be validated by the creator herself, to have their interpretation confirmed as the correct one. And the problem is that every time she said something, it didn't settle anything. It handed one side of the argument a weapon to use on the other. Jax fans felt vindicated. Ragatha fans felt dismissed. What was meant to be openness became conflict. This same cycle has been playing out in the Hosbin Hotel and Helva Boss communities, where Vivzy Pop has also been quietly pulling back for similar reasons. Every statement she makes gets pulled apart and turned into fuel for internal fandom wars. And so creators who genuinely wanted to share their work with their audience end up having to disappear from it just to protect themselves. Even the voice cast isn't immune. Michael Kovac, who voices Jax, has had to publicly ask fans multiple times to stop directing frustration at him when he isn't cast in something unrelated to the show. People who showed up to bring these characters to life are now managing the fallout of an audience that's lost the line between loving something and demanding things from it. Here's where I want to be fair, because some of the frustration had a real foundation. The original pilot framing grouped Pomni, Jax, and Regatha together as a clear central trio before introducing the wider cast. That framing set an expectation. Gooseworx herself said early on that different characters would be centered across different episodes. So when episode 5 didn't land the way some fans anticipated for Regatha, that wasn't a manufactured grievance. She later clarified on Tumblr that episodes 5 and 6 are actually a shared arc between Regatha and Jax, but that context arrived after the frustration had already turned into something uglier. Expressing disappointment when a story goes differently than you hoped? Completely reasonable. That's part of being invested in something. But there is a hard line between I wish this character had more focus and I'm going to make the person who created this character question why she's even doing this. One is a fan, the other is something else entirely, and the irony that keeps nagging at me is that a lot of the loudest voices in indie animation spaces, people who talk constantly about supporting independent creators and saving the art form, seem to include some of the same people making it genuinely difficult for independent animators to want to keep creating. You can't hold both of those positions at the same time. This is where I want to spend a little time because I think it's the most interesting part of all of this. Episode 8 is coming next month. The final episode is already deep in production. The story is locked. Nothing happening in the fandom right now is changing what's in those final 2 episodes. That much much is clear. But here's the thing, the script was written by someone who has been living inside this pressure for the better part of 2 years. She was rewriting material during production. She's been absorbing the weight of these expectations every step of the way, and all of that was present when she sat down to write the ending. Back in the summer of 2023, before the pilot had even released, she posted something that read like a joke at the time. She said she'd need the audience to sign a waiver promising to be a good fandom, or she'd have to make the show bad on purpose. Obviously not literal, but reading it now, knowing what the past 2 years actually looked like, it's a very different kind of line. After episode 7 made clear that Gooseworx isn't afraid to make choices that are going to be hard for some people to sit with, she's not writing toward comfort. The question becomes, what does an ending look like when it's written by someone who eventually stopped trying to meet the audience halfway and just told the story she needed to tell? That could be the best possible outcome. There's a version of this where the noise became so constant that the only real escape was to go fully inward and write without flinching. And endings written from that place can be extraordinary. Some of the most memorable finales in storytelling history came from creators who were exhausted, overstretched, and done apologizing for their vision. That pressure has a way of burning off everything that isn't essential. All the second-guessing, all the crowd-pleasing instincts, and what's left is just the story in its purest form. And honestly, if you've been paying attention to the show's themes, that kind of ending would actually make sense. The amazing digital circus has always been about people trapped in a situation they didn't choose, trying to hold on to who they are under conditions that keep pushing back against them. There's something almost poetic about the idea that the person writing that story has been living a quieter version of that same tension, the themes and the reality behind the scenes rhyming with each other in a way that wasn't planned. But there's another side to it. The fans who pushed hardest, who made the loudest demands about what the story owed them, they may be about to receive an ending that was written by someone who had been worn down by that exact behavior, and they'll never quite know what role they played in shaping what they're watching. That's not a threat. It's not even a warning. It's just the reality of how creative work actually gets made. Stories don't come out of a vacuum. They come out of a person, and that person exists in the world, and the world they've been living in while making this show has not been easy. Whatever the ending delivers, whether it's the resolution people were hoping for or something far less comfortable, it was earned by her through all of this. And I think that's worth sitting with before the episodes actually arrive. The Reddit account is gone. The hints and the behind-the-scenes glimpses that made this fandom feel like something special, those are gone with it. The voice cast is stepping back, and the person who built all of this has had to publicly reckon with whether she still wants to be associated with her own work. All of it traced back to people who couldn't make peace with the idea that a story has a perspective and that the perspective belongs to the person telling it. And what makes that genuinely sad is that this fandom, at its best, was something worth being part of. The theorizing, the fan art, the community discussions about what the show means and where it's going, that stuff was real. That energy was real. And it still exists in a lot of corners of this community. But right now, it's being overshadowed by the part of the fandom that decided their attachment to the story gave them some kind of ownership over it. It doesn't. It never did. A creator sharing their work with an audience is a generous act. And when that generosity gets met with hostility, the most natural response in the world is to stop sharing. That's not weakness. That's just being human. The ending is already written. It's on its way. And whatever it turns out to be, it was made by someone who cared deeply enough about the story to keep going even when the experience of making it became genuinely difficult. That matters. That's worth something. I genuinely hope it turns out to be exactly the story Gooseworx set out to tell from the beginning. Uncompromised, clear-eyed, and completely hers. And I hope the people watching it, wherever they land on all of this drama, can find a way to just let it be what it is. If you want to keep up with more videos like this, subscribing helps a lot. Drop your thoughts on the whole situation in the comments. I'm genuinely curious where people land on this one, and I'll see you in the next video.